The Stitch Surface Points command is the first of the 3 stitch tools that you have access to. And it's probably the one you're going to be using the least. And it's because it doesn't give you a lot of control, or actually any control really, over the tangency of your surfaces. It really exists more or less so that you can take 2 points along separate surfaces and bring them together, sew them together as if they were the same surface. Now you have a couple of different ways you can do this. If you like, you can actually grab surface points, arbitrary points along a surface, like so. So I've just shift selected 2 separate surfaces and grab points on the edges. They have to be on the edges. And go to Edit NURBS, go to Stitch, Stitch Surface Points. Let's open up the options. We can keep the 2 original surfaces if we want to. Assign equal weights to both of these points, which means that both these points will be drawn an equal distance and meet in the center. And we can cascade our stitch nodes, which I'll talk about here in just a second. If we go ahead and click Apply, these 2 points come together, like you can see here. Now, this is not something I would recommend. I would not recommend that you grab arbitrary points and stitch like this. I'm only doing this for an example. One, because it can be a little bit unpredictable if you just grab arbitrary points. It's going to be a lot easier to understand if you actually grab control vertices and sew those together instead. So I can sew those like so. I do want to mention this, though. The Cascade Stitch Node, the purpose of this is that each time you perform a new stitch, it's going to ignore whatever the last stitch did. Basically, the most recent stitch becomes the most important thing to ever happen to your model, in a sense. And really, this can be important if you are grabbing surface points. Like, say I grab the surface points up in the very corner of the surface, like so. And we go ahead and apply a stitch. Now, let's grab 2 more surface points just down from here. And this time I'll cascade stitch nodes, which, as mentioned earlier, means we're going to ignore whatever's going on with our stitch information from our previous node. So now I click Apply, and look what happens. Because we're ignoring what happened before, because we're ignoring that stitch, the surface now overlaps itself. So that can be a bit of an issue sometimes, so just watch out for that. Now, if you are indeed simply using control vertices for stitching, then this won't be a problem. You can do this all day. We apply. Notice when I grab one control vertex, the other one comes along for the ride. They are sewn together. Also be aware that if I were to delete history, I would lose that. They would no longer come along like that. And I can grab a CV here and a CV here, and let's go ahead and apply again. Now these 2 are stitched. Grab CV here, hit G. Those are stitched. Here, here, hit G again. Now they're all stitched together, and as I move a CV on one side, the other side comes right along for the ride. Boom. Now we don't have any tangency. That's not really a major factor in this particular tool. Also notice that we have created a lot of little stitch nodes. Now let me undo a little ways. I'll go back to this one stitch. I've created 2 separate stitch nodes, one for each surface. And notice how this works. You have a bias. This controls how much influence the stitch has over that point. As you bleed this away, the stitch has less and less effect, meaning that if I were to grab control vertices over here, you'll notice that, 1, the 2 points aren't connected anymore. Second, that we are not moving as much. There's like a scaled down effect as we move one surface from the other. Just go ahead and grab that stitch again, set that back up to 1, now the 2 stay together. You also have fixed boundary, which is not going to be much of an issue here. This is just a corrective force applied to the boundary of the object as you move it around, not something that is really a major factor when you're just stitching control points. And that's really all there is to this. Again, this is not a tool that you'll find yourself using for the most part when you're stitching with a NURBS model. I think the most frequent one that I use is Global Stitch, because that allows you to stitch many edges all at once. And that's going to pretty much wrap it up for this video. Thanks a lot.